What advice would you give, I don't know, your 21-year-old self now?
I think every person would give this advice to themselves, but I think particularly for women, because we are somewhat in the minority in this sector, is to be more confident and have faith in yourself. Also to stick with some sense of who you are, and that you are allowed to have opinions, and you do actually have experience, which is sort of sunk in through all these years of working in this sector.
Hello and welcome to Exchange Traded People. I'm your host, Michael Reardon, and today's guest is Beverly Chandler, Managing Editor of ETF Express. Beverly, welcome to the show.
Hi, hello, thank you for having me.
Very nice to have you. So, Bev, I'd like to kind of dive straight in and get to know people as quickly as possible on this podcast. So, my first question couldn't be more personal, which is, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Really tragically, I actually wanted to be a broadcasting journalist, and here
Really?
I am. I know, it's bizarre, and of course it was a bit of a dream for a long time, and in fact I was a print journalist in the end for a number of years, but weirdly, of course, with the modern world, broadcasting has come back in. It doesn't have to be just reading the news on the BBC anymore. It can be more than that.
So basically, from a kid, you wanted to be in the seat that you are in today, basically. Wow,
Okay.
that's pretty cool. So obviously being a kid and then becoming an adult, how did you get into, the seat you're in now? What's your journey?
So the journey is a really strange one, because it would never have been finance, except that that's where the jobs were when I came out of university.
Okay.
So one of my first jobs was to be a research assistant at the London School of Economics Business History Unit, working on the history of Glaxo and the British Bank in the Middle East, so two different books. Basically, honestly, just typing, really. But gradually being allowed to sort of pick things out of the company archives. And from there, I went to a magazine called Business, so this is really late 80s. This is my most glamorous job ever, I always say. I peaked much too early. It was half owned by Condé Nast and half owned by the Financial Times. And our offices were in Chelsea and London, and we shared the offices with World of Interiors. So we were there being very 1980s financial journalists. I was a researcher. And the ladies over that way, mostly ladies, to be fair, were bringing in most beautiful porcelain lavatories or rugs, or it was a very, very extraordinary experience. And given that time, there was an awful lot happening as well with big companies and lots of sort of showy late 1980s boom stuff, big shoulder pads. I think I'm going to leave it there.
Right.
So they taught me. We got sent up to Bracken House, which was the FT's home. They're back there now, but they were there then for training. And so I got a really good education with some very fierce subs who would rip your copy apart and make sure you were certain of your facts. And then I just stayed within that group, actually. And when the financial advisor industry changed with the reformation of all of that of financial services, I went to work for Financial Advisor magazine. There were a few of them around because it was a boom time for that industry as well. So I was there that's B2B, but with a bit more of a retail focus, and in fact focused on offshore investing. I edited a newspaper on offshore investing, which is where I found hedge funds, because they were offshore and they were performing and they were interesting, and I was kind of fascinated by that energy, really, and the growth and how they were finding opportunities. So that was my specialism for years. I wrote books on hedge funds and did lots of conference work, and I was quite well known in the hedge fund industry for a while. So that was that.
And then how did you discover ETFs?
So when I joined Global Fund Media, they had an editor already for Hedge Week, which is their hedge title. And so I was given ETF Express, and I was a bit sniffy about it, frankly, because I thought, well, these enormous passive funds are not going to have enough stories for me to write up and explore. But actually, of course, look what happened. Amazing stories, but also now I'm just so amused at how many hedge fund firms I knew really well at one point are appearing in ETFs. So that's kind of cool.
Come full circle, right?
Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. Um, so obviously you've had like a kind of a long career in kind of financial journalism. But so when you sit here kind of chatting to me now today, and when you think about kind of the learnings that you've kind of taken from your career, like what advice would you give, I don't know, your 21-year-old self now, say?
I think definitely, I think every person would give this advice to themselves, but I think particularly for women, because we are somewhat in the minority in this sector, is to be more confident and have faith in your self. Also, to stick with some sense of who you are, and that you are allowed to have opinions, and you do actually have experience, which is sort of sunk in through all these years of working in this sector. So definitely more confidence and stick. And it's amazing how also people don't disappear. You know, you meet people,
Mm.
particularly with this new active ETF move. I'm finding I'm reconnecting with people I knew, 20, 30 years ago. And it's kind of nice to be recognized now that I wasn't that bad 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's definitely a small industry, so don't burn your bridges, right? Kind of just shifting a little bit to the ETF industry and your observation. So, like ETF Express, where you currently are now, I mean, it's been around. I think we were talking just off camera, like 10 years ago, 10 years or so now. So,
2006 it was
2006.
founded.
Wow,
It's
even long,
really old. It's
much
the
longer.
oldest, it's the only independent one, and it's the oldest one, and it's the only global one.
Wow.
It was founded so within GFM, and they had me in 2015. So I've been running it since then for 11 years.
So when it so 2006, so ETFs were still like pretty niche at that point. So, like, what basically did the owners? What did they see, or what did you guys see at the time that others didn't?
I think it was obviously growing. And when I arrived in 2015, I did a sort of research project for myself to see who these firms were. And obviously, at the time, really largely American firms. And there were quite a few sort of like almost like in the US, like the savings and loans, sort of almost mom and pop ETF issuing firms, which have disappeared completely now. But they would set up one, one big, massive one, sort of maybe the world. Actually, probably not the world, America. And
Mm,
that would be the ETF they offered, and that's all their clients went into. And then, of course, the whole industry has just grown significantly, refined down to really quite a few big names since then. At the time, it was these huge passive products that didn't move much, which was having come from the hedge fund world, I found quite intriguing. But then you talk to people who don't understand what ETFs are. The minute you try to explain what an ETF is, there's a sort of screen comes over their face, they glaze. I mean, the minute because it's a slightly tricky concept. I could probably explain hedge funds more easily than I can ETFs to my art class, say. That's a really good example because they definitely were phased out really quickly when they said, "What do you do?"
mm,
But however, they probably own them because they are saving through,
yeah.
something like a robo advisor or some sort of platform, and they actually own ETFs and don't know what they are.
What they are, yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I think I mean, we're kind of in this bubble, right? And we assume everybody has like perfect knowledge of ETFs, but the reality is when you walk out onto the street, like most people still have no idea really. So, despite all the kind of the work and the educational work that the industry has done for the past 30 years, we're still kind of just scratching the surface and to a large extent, right?
It is really hard, and the new demographic that is investing in ETFs through these robo advisors and neo broker type firms are sort of 25 to 45, and that's exactly the age group that you want if you're running a financial services company, because in theory they're the people with the money or the building the money. So the fact that they are doing this through ETFs is great, but the fact that they don't really know what an ETF is is a bit bewildering.
Yeah,
But I've got a friend who was advised to put your money in MSCI World, and she did. And so she's my only friend, she said, "Oh, I've got an ETF," and it was that one, and she'd been in there for years, and it had done her really proud. It's just the one.
Keep it simple, right? As an editor, like you see like hundreds of product launches, and I know you cover this in your on your site the whole time. But what would you say kind of separates like real innovation from marketing hype now? Because there's certainly a lot of marketing hype in the industry from my viewpoint anyway.
It's been really extraordinary because we have 3 launch columns, which we do weekly, and it's one of our most popular read columns. Actually, I can tell you, extraordinarily, we've had a 243% increase in our readership of the launches columns in 1 year, which
Wow.
is presumably reflecting the fact that there are just so many launches.
Yeah.
So I do see them are piling through. I'm sort of compiling them, every single morning. I think, and also because I can attach them to our awards series, so I can see, because of our track insight data that we base the issuer awards on, we can see what's top performing, and so I have a sort of weirdly qualitative index. I can in my head. This is a very tragic thing. It can never be turned into an ETF, but I suspect is actually quite accurate. That obviously the rise of options-based products has been the most extraordinary thing in the last year, and I interview 2 or 3 times a week with issuers and hear of products that could give you an income for life from your mid-20s, your late 20s. It's no longer a question of work till your state pension comes in, and then buy an annuity and live on tin soup. It's not that, if you know how to invest, which is probably more common in the US and Canada than it is here,
Yeah.
or certainly in the States. Yeah.
Do you think that the ETF media helps shape the industry or just simply reflects it?
I think we reflect it. I hope we reflect it. We shouldn't be shaping anything. We're not qualified to. That's the whole point of being a journalist. It's heaven. If I were qualified to, I'd be running an ETF, wouldn't I? Be a lot more smoother path, I can tell you.
Well, I guess from an educational standpoint, you can contribute that way, right?
Oh, yeah, that's really important. I mean, I think because I'm a great one for democratizing investment, which is partly why I like my job, because, as I said originally, it wouldn't have been about money. I would have written about gardening or cooking or something
Right.
else, travel, I don't know. But I do like my job because I'm really interested by money, because people just, as we've been saying, or I've been saying, you haven't had a chance to get a word in edgeways, but I think you agree with me that we're very undereducated, and we expect, we're quite reliant on the state, particularly in the UK. We expect
Yeah.
the state to look after us, whereas we don't have brokerage accounts, really,
Yeah.
I would say. No, very rarely would you find someone who's got a brokerage account. Um, and yet money is a force and an energy, and it can be used to build and to grow. And I think I like that. I like the power of it and the growth pattern it can achieve. So I'm quite excited by products that can democratize wealth a little, so it's not quite so divided between those who have and the have-nots.
Yeah. Yeah. How have you seen the rise of social media and LinkedIn platforms, etc. How have they changed how issuers are communicating with the market now? Because I guess when you started back in 2005, when I said that was like even pre-LinkedIn days, so there
I
was
can't
no social
remember.
media then, right?
I can't remember when LinkedIn arrived. I was a very early adopter because I was told to be, I think, in the job. And originally it was supposed to be just this lovely network where you could sort of find people, like-minded people.
Yeah.
But it's obviously has become a much more of a corporate use. We use it obviously a lot. I post and support. So the awards, I will reward and support people who have campaigns to get votes in our awards, which is quite common, and it makes me very happy when they turn up. And I post most of our big features on there. I don't post every launch and every news story because I literally would never move from my desk. So there's just too many. I do use X a little still. Some people do. We do cover crypto quite a bit. So crypto seems to be an X type subject, as I would say.
How they are using social media platforms to kind of communicate with the market now is different versus how they would communicate with kind of traditional kind of media like yourself or the FT or whatever. Do you see like any nuances in how they are engaging with kind of social media versus traditional media?
I suppose you do see the odd press release. I pick one up through LinkedIn that hasn't come to me through my email.
Okay.
But you can see from the comms side of a issuer or an asset management company, they're having to get a sharp stick and poke someone to post that story on their own account. It just can be difficult, people are busy and they don't want to have to post a story about oh look, we've launched a new ETF and it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Whereas a press release is a perfectly standard vehicle for saying,
Yeah.
here it is, this is what it is. Do you want to talk about it a bit more?
Do you think asset managers nowadays are getting better at storytelling, or are most still kind of product led rather than kind of like an outcome led?
That's a really interesting question. And I think that's what's exciting about the ETF industry, actually, is because of the range of company sizes that are involved. So I was saying when I first arrived, it was just like these potentially quite small firms all over, and then they all went, and it was just huge firms. And now you have lovely new people arriving in the industry, new firms who are issuing some of these new products, like the options-based products or short leverage or active. It'll be their one ETF, but they actually have a massive hedge fund business behind it. So that's kind of cool. And I think probably they all work differently with the media and with their marketing exercises. I do love a story, and that's partly why I keep up these interviews, because you really, like we're doing now, you do find out more about people and about their companies and through talking to them.
Sure. I guess more people are going to be engaged in the story versus a press release about a new product launch, right? That's more like, yeah, so what type.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And of
Yeah.
course, sometimes it's something like all those defense products we've had in because that story is behind it, or uranium or gold. My
Gold.
goodness, gold. That's probably the most glistery story.
What has changed from your opinion? What has changed most in ETF journalism over the past, say, 5 years?
There's more of it.
There's more of it.
It was a brief moment where it was mostly me.
Yeah, I mean, you say there's more of it, but I'm just trying to think off the top of my head now. I mean, there's two kind of like big platforms in the US that I spring to mind. There's yourself. There's another platform in the UK that you'll know well. But apart from that, like who like okay, the even the FT, they don't seem to
Yeah.
much ETFs like as they did in the past. At least that's what it seems.
Well, they
So
used to do the ETF Central, was it called, with Track Insight,
oh
actually.
yeah, that one
They
is there
had
as well.
a section. I think it does take a lot of work. It's not an easy industry to cover.
Mm.
It is huge. And I mean, it is huge. And the numbers are extraordinary that
Mhm.
perhaps it isn't as well reflected across financial press. But I do personally see, I mean, a lot of other titles now have got dedicated ETF people.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. You said at the beginning that you're the only kind of ETF like journalist platform that is independent. Is that like is that deliberate or is that just kind of circumstances?
It's circumstances, but it is quite nice to feel that we can stand here and not be, we're not owned by, we don't have a company that does big events or
Yeah.
behind us. I do work in the summer. I do these panels, ETF panels with Informa at Fund Forum in Monaco. I've been doing that for a few years, and that's really interesting, actually, really good fun. And what there I can, part of my qualitative index again would be that when I started out, it was quite a small part of the program, and it's grown. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest wealth asset management conference,
In
I
Europe,
think,
yeah.
in the world, but
Oh,
certainly in
really?
Europe.
Oh, wow,
It's
okay.
huge. And ETFs are really creeping up and taking over, which is quite fun. Well, a bit taking
I can
over.
imagine. I can imagine, like as we were kind of talking at the beginning, like when you started, you were kind of at the back of the room, and now you're kind of more, you're moving more towards the center. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit closer to the action.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's cool. All right. So I started with asking you a personal question, and I'm going to end asking you another personal question, which is, if you weren't doing what you do right now, what would you do with your life?
So it's not going to be very work related, actually, even
Good.
though I do
Good.
love my job and I am going to carry on doing my job. But the fantasy sort of end of the day, I'm from the Isle of Wight, so I'm an islander. And so I would be in my garden overlooking the sea, cooking for everybody I love and all those who love me. So it would be quite a lot of cooking.
Nice. I hope it's not raining there.
In my fantasy, it's always sunny
Yeah, and it's always sunny.
and not windy, which is
I'm not.
actually not very true of the Isle of Wight.
I
It's quite windy.
can imagine. Yeah. All right, Bev. This was so much fun. So thank you very much for joining. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.